Welcome to the University of Michigan Dentistry Podcast Series, promoting oral health care worldwide.
We're seated in the operator's position at 11 o'clock and viewing here the mirror view of the tooth that we're going to be operating on to prepare and restore a class 3 carious lesion on the distal of tooth number 8. Again, the carious lesion is located in a somewhat cervical position. It is in a mid-proximal position immediately cervical to the contact area. If we look at the labial aspect of the tooth, we see that there is a slight projection of the carious lesion through to the labial side. Looking at the radiograph, we see the lesion on the distal of tooth number 8, the cervical to the incisal aspect of the lesion, and see also that this lesion penetrates into dentin through the dentin-enamel junction. We're going to be using high-speed instrumentation, using first a number 1/2 round burr to make our penetration, initial extension into the carious lesion. As we do this, we want to have the burr paralleling that proximal surface, placed directly over the lesion, approximately 90 degrees to that lingual surface, and we can initiate preparation. We'll be using an air water spray and vacuum in order to keep the area cleared. We're now into the area of caries. We're projecting just through that area in order to carry to the labial aspect of that lesion. Our incisal extent of the caries, carrying into that. We want to make sure that the labial cervical area is in a more cervical position than is the lingual cervical area. We have the preparation now completed. The entrance to the preparation, we can now change burrs and move on over to a 169 burr. With the 169 burr in the contraangle, we're ready to carry out the further extension of the preparation. Again, letting that labial cervical aspect being at a lower position, more gingival position. There's going to be a greater depth to the axial wall as we move incisally because of the greater thickness of the enamel. We want to thin down that enamel, but still maintain the protection of that for the adjacent tooth. Now we'll dry that area and get a better look at it from the lingual. We can see in this area the carious lesion as it does penetrate through the proximal area. I can get a view of caries still a bit at the dentin-enamel junction near the incisal area, just a bit more in the cervical area. So we'll carry out a bit more of the extension of the preparation. And stopping there and drying the area again. At this point, we might begin to remove the protecting area from the adjacent tooth with a hand instrument using a Wiedelstadt chisel to initiate this in the cervical area. And then at the incisal area, a similar removal of the unsupported enamel. As I'm doing this, I'm seeing here again a little greater extension of the caries, both labially and incisally, in the enamel position. The labial wall is to really be a long curvature, fairly open preparation. Again, I see that we're going to need to come back to the rotary instrument and extend that incisal wall a bit more in the incisal area. Come back to the labial and incisal area with hand instruments. Cleaving that away again first with the Wiedelstadt and then moving to the 100 hole to work the incisal and labial wall to gain some smoothness to this area. And if we so need to extend and smoothen that wall with rotary instruments, we might do that with a low-speed contraangle and a 33.5 inverted cone burr. Here I don't see the particular need to carry out that type of smoothing action. Again, the hole being used here to plane the respective enamel walls, gain smoothness to the preparation. We could now move into the low-speed instrumentation, and we'll be utilizing a number 1/2 burr in order to place the retention. Retention is going to be placed primarily in a lingual cervical position within dentin, and also into a labial incisal position. Be into creating a point angle in this incisal area. Third point of retention, which will be minor, will be in the labial cervical area. So we'll move then to the low-speed instrumentation. With the half-round burr, we'll be placing the minor retention in the labial axial cervical area into the dentin, and then moving back to the lingual axial cervical position with a greater amount of retention. This is more significant. And then we'll be moving into the area of the incisal for the retention. Here again, retention being placed within dentin. Very positive retention, and with an opening or a throat groove into that retentive point. Now we'll use the Explorer to check the retention into that area, and again in the cervical position, a minor retention here and more major retention back in the lingual position. The outline form then is completed, and we have the retention placed within the preparation. We can then refer back to the criteria for the cavity preparation. The finish of the walls and margins and cavity definition is the first thing that we can look at, obviously the enamel wall should parallel the enamel rod direction. There is no bevel really indicated in this preparation because of the restorative material is going to be used, the alloyed filling gold. The walls and margins should be smooth and the cavity well defined. As we view this within the preparation, we see that there is smoothness and regularity. You see the outline of the cervical and the labial margins here, as well as the lingual margin. The cavity wall has definition to it. There's crispness to the preparation. The retention should be conspicuous visually and tactily. We do see that that is true, that there is a good visual observation of the retention in the incisal area. It is within the dentin, leaving an intact dentin-enamel junction. In the cervical area, minor retention to the labial aspect, and then moving back to the lingual, there's major retention here. Again, we can see this, and with the explorer into position, obviously we can feel that. The external outline form is extended for convenience, for removal of decalcification. Here, of course, there are no contiguous fissures. Looking at the tooth again, as we view this, there is absence of decalcification in the cervical area. We've cleared the carious lesion in its cervical and incisal position. There is still contact in the incisal area to some extent. The external outline form does provide convenience for us, and there's somewhat of a triangular shape to the cavity preparation with a good opening so that there is convenience for in the condensation of the restorative material. Lastly, the internal outline form, it's extended into dentin. There is complete caries removal, and there is no excessive tissue loss. Again, that we see the preparation, retention is in dentin. There is an absence of the carious lesion throughout the preparation, and overall there's been a conservative loss of tooth tissue. Looking at a model of the preparation, we see the outline form, again with this sweeping curvature from incisal across the labial wall down to the labial cervical position. The lingual cervical area is more incisally placed than is the labial. This aids convenience form as well as retention form. So again, it's somewhat of a triangular shape to the preparation. The retention itself, major retention in this incisal area and into the cervical area, minor retention to the labial, and major retention in this lingual cervical position. We're removing the temporary stopping from the prepared cavity. We've placed this into the prepared cavity first and then have applied an acrylic matrix across the labial aspect of these teeth. Doing this in order to create a wall against which we can condense then the restorative material. As we look into the preparation, we can see that the red acrylic here has formed a continuation of the labial wall of the preparation. Again, it gives us a wall against which condensation can occur. We've gained some slight separation with the wooden wedge having been put to place previously. In considering condensation, we would like to test the various condensing instruments. We have one that we can initiate condensation with, and we can see that as we approach the preparation, that this fits into that incisal area well, and also fits down into the lingual cervical position and across that across the cervical floor to the labial area. The opposite end of that instrument is going to lay against the axial wall and be able to condense from axial wall position on out into the labial margin area. So we'll begin then with a piece of the annealed cohesive gold. Going to be making the application of this into the cervical position and begin the condensation with the condensing instrument. Going to start first just laying the piece across that labial to the labial cervical area and begin condensation then into the major retentive area, which is at this lingual cervical. So the holding instrument into the labial, the condensation being initiated into the lingual cervical area. With that area condensed well, we'll then transfer the holding instrument to that position and carry out the condensation then along that cervical area and on over to the labial cervical. We're need then of another piece of foil. Carry through the routine annealing process of this. Lay it into position. Again, with the holding instrument appropriately placed, extend on from that area across into the labial cervical. Stepping the condenser, making sure that condensation occurs in this stepwise direction. And now we ought to be locked into this area, again, from lingual to labial area. We can then carry through with an additional piece of foil that will be carried on up the labial wall and be tucking this into the incisal area. Utilizing the larger aspect of the condensing instrument first to lay this into position and then holding at the cervical area, condensing and directing that condenser now into the incisal aspect to lock that material into that retentive area. Again, considering then the stepwise nature of the condensation, overlapping each successive area. We'll move around now to the opposite end of that condensing instrument and making sure that we are going to, as this extends on out to that labial wall and labial margin area, to condense into that position. So we're locked then in three areas. Principally the retention in the lingual cervical and incisal area and across to the labial cervical area. So the continuity then, or the continuation of condensation, will go on piece by piece until we have built our normal contour against the acrylic matrix, and contour against using the adjacent tooth as somewhat of a matrix, also bringing out that to a normal lingual surface contour. We're nearly completed with the condensation. We have still another piece yet to place in this cervical area. Again, laying that into position, and then the condensation, continuing with this rocking motion. And see too that as we have reached margin areas, we've attempted to carry through the removal of the gross excess of material so we don't have that to contend with in our finishing operation. This makes the finding of margins then more easily accomplished. As we view this now, we want to make sure, of course, that we have sufficient excess of gold in order that we can establish the contour that we want. And by viewing this from different angles, we see indeed that we do have this contour established with the condensed material, and we're ready then to proceed. The contouring and finishing is going to be initiated using the 5C carver just to remove some of the loose excess material from the surface of the restorative material. This really takes off some of the surface material and does clear away some of the excess from the cavity margins also. We'll move from this into rotary instrumentation and using a carrot-shaped stone in order to rotate that stone from restoration to tooth tissue. At the incisal area here first. Uncovering the margin area, and then change rotation, and we'll be working a bit into that lingual concavity, developing that and uncovering our lingual margin area. Continuing this area on down then to the cervical position. Doing this all, of course, with our labial matrix still into position. This gives us complete stability and also convenience here as far as finger rest is concerned. So we'll continue on the contouring of this lingual area with the rotary instruments, and then we'll carry out the removal of the matrix itself. With the acrylic matrix now removed, we've applied the Farrier separator and have that, of course, locked into position with compound in order that we can use a lightning strip to break the contact area that we have and remove the bridge of gold that we see from the tooth number 8 on over to number 7. So with this slight separation now that we have, working the strip from an incisal to a cervical area to again dislodge that slight excess of gold, and we're now just about through that contact area. Contact is in excess because of the separation that we've gained both with our wedge initially and with the condensation force that we've applied. We're protecting, of course, gingival tissue here with the separator. We begin to establish a bit of the contour on the marginal ridge area. Once this is completed, now with this contact area open, we'll carry on with the finer disc and then move into the completion of the restoration. We're completing now the finishing of the polishing sequence utilizing the rubber cup and dry tin oxide with a constant stream of air on this. We can then cleanse the field with a stream of water and the evacuator. And then looking at the restoration closely and referring to the criteria for the final restoration. First of all, again, the surface of the restoration ought to be smooth and well polished, and as we see the restoration, that surface is indeed a smooth, glossy surface. It's going to be non-irritating as far as the tongue is concerned, will be well received by the oral tissues. The margin integrity, there should be no evidence, of course, of a crevice along the margin that's detectable with the Explorer. And as we move from the restoration to tooth, in all the margin areas, we find that there is no detection of the margin itself. The anatomy and contour, we wish the axial contour in this case and the marginal ridges to be consistent, continuous with the existing tooth form. And of course, at a later time, we'll be checking the occlusal function when the rubber dam has been removed. But as we look at the restoration, we see that there is a concavity, a natural concavity in tooth tissue, and that does extend into the restoration appropriately, and there is a full marginal ridge, again, that's continuous with the marginal ridge of the tooth itself. The rubber dam has now been removed, and the check has been made for the occlusal contact in this area, and there is no interference present. As we look at the labial of this final Class 3 cohesive gold restoration, we see that indeed it is a labial margin that is rather inconspicuous and is therefore harmonious as far as its aesthetic value is concerned.
You've been listening to a presentation from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, which is dedicated to supporting open learning and open educational resources. This recording is licensed under the Creative Commons. It may be reused and redistributed for nonprofit use. Please attribute materials to the University of Michigan School of Dentistry and redistribute under this same license. For more information on how this and other University of Michigan School of Dentistry recordings may be used, visit www.dent.umich.edu/license.